Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Salty Saturdays, the only show where we can talk about everything that nobody cares about and bitch about it all at the same time. Thank you all for tuning in today. We really appreciate it. And let's get right into it with our expert panel. Today we have with me, as always, Matt Vader 74. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. What was that?
Our new intro.
You blew my brain with some new graphics. That's pretty cool. Very nice.
Cool.
Very nice.
How you doing today?
I'm good. Nice to see everybody. Nice to see Brian, Mike, the Mexican Iron Man, Crimson Rogue. Got some new blood in here. It's awesome.
We do. And speaking of new blood, Crimson Rogue from The Book is Better. One of the most voracious readers and expert commentators I know. Thank you so much for joining us today, sir. It's good to have you.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here. Although apparently I just realized I'm the only one here without a hat.
Well, you also used to have a beautiful mane of hair that you just completely cut off. So
yeah, well, it went to charity. So Wigs for Kids, everybody. Great organization.
That's great.
All right. Why don't you shout out your channel so that people know where to go check you out?
All right. Well, I run the channel Crimson Rogue, Crimson spelled with a K, where I mostly do long-form book analysis and reviews sprinkled in with plenty of memes and mockery. I'm currently actually just wrapping up a review on the infamous 365 Days, or as I've been calling it, the evil version of 50 Shades of Grey. As you can see from behind me, I absolutely love books. I love reading. I'm trying to make it as a writer eventually. And if any of that sounds interesting, then you can listen to me complain about bad writing for 2 to 3 hours at a time with my videos.
And also with us today is Brian from the Popcast, as always, one of our favorite co-hosts to come on board and give us his insights. And we're actually going to be talking about his latest video today a little bit later on. So
yeah.
Forward to that. Yeah. How you doing today, Brian?
Not bad. Let me get my hat off for you. There you go. All right. Yeah, not bad, man. Glad to be here.
You know, you look a lot less like Scott Grimes with your hat off. All right. And last but certainly not least, Mike, the Mexican Iron Man. Thank you so much for joining us today, sir. It's good.
Hey, I'm so honored and so happy to be here. Longtime fan, member, Patreon, subscriber. I've been a huge fan of your work for a long time. And been watching, I watch you guys pretty much religiously every Saturday. And try to catch as many of the videos and the features that you guys do for Patreon. I am here as a fanboy. I'm fanboying it up here. Proud basement dweller up here on the second floor of my house. I got my merch here.
Very nice.
Of course, I got all my, guess what?
Got the buttons.
I got my buttons, baby. Wait, where are they?
It's a true super fan right there.
That's awesome.
Yep, super fanning it up.
And we got one more expert panelist who's scheduled to be here. He might be running a little bit late, but should he show up later on, we will give him his introduction and his due. But before we get going, I just want to shout out everyone who's currently in the chat. Orwell's son, hello. Anthony Mark, good to see you, Anthony. The Marshall, I believe he's a new fan. Good to see you. David Farnsworth is in the chat. Joker Voice, hashtag keep talking. Good to see you, sir. Rod Scarborough. Who else do we have in here? Gavin Blackburn, good to see you. Stephen Ernest is also here as well. Gary Reed, Shenanigans, Marks 47, Star Cobalt, and Ironcaster. And of course, Danny the Dork Knight is still waiting on his buttons. So thank you all for being in chat. And just a reminder that if you guys want to drop us super chats, we will feature them and read them as we go throughout the stream. And we will have a good old time doing that. And everything you guys do helps support the channel. And we really appreciate it. So get those super chats going and we will be more than happy to feature them. All right, guys. So before we get into the Snyder Cut stuff, Matt Vader 74 wanted to kind of bring something to everyone's attention.
Oh, yeah.
Matt, take it away.
I just wanted to very quickly wish Mr. Vincent Kennedy McMahon, age 77, a happy retirement. I know he's been in the news here lately with some shenanigans over there in the WWE, but regardless of all of that, this man has been responsible for literally untold thousands of hours of my personal entertainment since the early 80s. Basically, I've been watching his stuff my entire life, and it's the end of an era over there. And whether the product right now isn't that great, but he's had a huge influence in the entertainment world, and I just wanted to wish him a happy retirement. He's given us everything from Hulk Hogan to David Batista in our movies and our entertainment, and we've all watched a lot of stuff that he's responsible for. And I just want to say happy retirement, and I'm looking forward to what they do next with his daughter and Triple H running the show over there. So yeah, that's really all I had to say. Happy retirement, man. You earned it. So
All right. Does anybody want to shout out their wrestling fandom while we're on the topic, or are we all ready to move on?
Yeah, happy retirement. I never really watched wrestling, but it definitely added value to the world. So
I used to be.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I used to be big into it when I was a little kid, and when I was in college. Those were like the two times that I was like super into wrestling. And Vince McMahon, like he discovered The Rock, he discovered John Cena, like all these big time wrestlers got their start because of Andre the Giant. I mean,
yeah,
I remember going over to my uncle's house with my dad and them renting for like $128 some pay-per-view like WrestleMania event when I was like 10 years old.
Dude, I used to work summer jobs so I could afford to see SummerSlam.
Yeah.
So
I remember that. That hype. The internet ruined the wrestling hype. That's for sure.
Definitely.
Yep.
All right, guys. Well, if we're done talking about the Vince McMahon retirement, let's get into the thing that I really am excited to talk about, because you know me, I'm a dyed-in-the-wool anti-Snyder person. I don't think he's a very talented filmmaker. I've been alone on my hill for quite some time in this respect. But we're going to be talking about the Snyder Cut controversy. So for those of you who don't know, Rolling Stone came out with an article very recently detailing the behind-the-scenes campaign that Zack Snyder orchestrated to get his Snyder Cut made. And it is a interesting tale of revenge and evil genius that this filmmaker orchestrated against one of the most powerful studios in Hollywood. And he's still wielding the power of it in order to bully executives and other filmmakers and basically advance his career. And it's a very interesting take on things. We have a link to the article in the description of this video. So if you guys haven't read it out in the chat, I highly recommend that you do. But one of the things I want to talk about first and foremost is, basically that a lot of people seem to get the point of this article wrong. And this Rolling Stone article, in fact, let me just call it up here real quick so that you guys can see what I'm talking about. So the point of this article that a lot of people have been latching onto is that 13% of the Twitter accounts that promoted the Release the Snyder Cut hashtag have been proven to be fake. They've been bots. And a lot of people out there are like, well, that still means that like 87% of the accounts were real. And that doesn't mean that the Snyder Cut fan base doesn't exist. But what a lot of people fail to understand about how Twitter works is like, if you have enough accounts that start a hashtag trending, just need to get it trending, then other people can jump on top of that and propagate it and spread the message and stuff like that. And so what the article points out is that the Snyder Cut, Release the Snyder Cut movement was a planned and orchestrated campaign by Zack Snyder and his PR agency to help him get the Snyder Cut released, because there was a lot of behind the scenes stuff going on that the public didn't know about. And it was an AstroTurf movement, basically. Yes, eventually it caught on, but it was not it did not spring from the fan base, basically. Zack Snyder created the impression that his fans were far more big and robust than they actually were. And eventually it got to the point where like now he wields a lot of power on social media, to the point where he's threatening other executives and filmmakers with sicking his fans on them. And as someone who has been on the receiving end of the Snyder cultists multiple times, I know what that's like, and it's not fun. So at the risk of having the Snyder cultists come after us, I want to go around the panel and get your initial reactions to the article. Then we're going to dive into a few specifics of it. So Matt Bader, what did you think of this Snyder Cut?
Just real briefly, I will simply say that the Snyder cult is real. They're kind of crazy. And Zack Snyder is a evil genius pulling this off. He's a supervillain, right? Is that kind of how we're going to roll with this?
I don't think so.
No,
I wouldn't call him a supervillain. I would just call him a very cutthroat businessman.
Yeah. It's an interesting article. I found it kind of fascinating, honestly, and the way that he manipulated social media to get this thing going. It's pretty fascinating. I admit I enjoyed the Snyder Cut. It was one of my favorite movies that came out last year. That's not saying a lot because the COVID era was pretty weak for most things.
That.
But I could also say that I also have a few old tweets out there with release the Snyder Cut hashtag attached to them as well. So, I don't know what to say really. It's interesting to me. It's a fascinating strategy. I'll leave it at that for now.
All right, Kyle, or Crimson Rogue, whichever you prefer. What are your initial thoughts on this article?
Well, I don't personally hold Rolling Stone in terribly high regard. When it comes to entertainment stuff, they're reliable enough, I suppose. It seemed like it wasn't just the whole botting allegation that they were trying to cover. They were also broad strokes painting everything that went wrong with that movie. I do think that you had something going there, Matt, when you talked about how Snyder must have gotten this all started. I wish I could pull this up, but there was a stat that I read a while ago that said that like 5% of Twitter accounts account for like almost all news and engagement on the website. So if you had a good enough set of bots, like a bot farm or whatever, you would be able to get an artificial hashtag going. So it could be that he just started something with however many bots he had to get release the Snyder Cut trending, and then the fanboys could jump onto that. And you probably had a few people in there who were just doing it for shits and giggles. Oh my God, the first cut was so terrible. Let's see what the next cut is like. Because I have not been a fan of Snyder's for a very long while. Like visually, he makes things look good, but if you look at actual story composition, he sometimes gets it right. I think that the DC
the only time he gets it right is when he verbatim copies the comic book that he's adapting.
I won't disagree with that. But I haven't been a fan of pretty much anything that the DCEU has attempted. Wonder Woman was like the first, I would say, good movie that they came out with. Probably passable is probably better. And that was still loaded with problems if you actually look at everything. I don't know. I think that the article was trying to do a lot more than just reveal the botting allegation. It was also trying to drag Snyder through the mud, probably not undeservedly with some of the stuff that he's done. But I think that Justice League should go down as a massive lesson for everyone else out there, whoever wants to get their hand in movie making or anything, as far as taking criticism and producing a coherent story.
Okay. Brian, what were your thoughts on this article?
Yeah. So first of all, Kadish, I think your anti-Snyder underwear is showing a little bit with this one, my friend. Secondly, Jeff Johns is a hack. And the original leadership at WB, however you feel about Zack Snyder's work, Zack Snyder is not the supervillain here. Zack Snyder is a shrewd person who dealt with a giant multi-billion-dollar international corporation that had corrupt leadership at the top of its tree trying to destroy him and take him out of his own project. What exactly happened with the Snyder Cut, and I was a fan of it. I'm not a Snyder fanboy per se, but I like his visuals and all that. I do think he has problems with storytelling. The Snyder Cut was the best thing I saw during the COVID time. But the people that article was timed so perfectly to come out when the new leadership was dropping the digital cut and right before Comic-Con. That information was old. That information was almost a year old. Why did they time that to come out right then? Well, because it was a hatchet job. The whole point of that article was to cause trouble for Snyder and the now new leadership at Warner Brothers. Jeff Johns is a hack. He shouldn't have been on the Snyder Cut. He didn't do anything to make that happen. In fact, he fought against the Snyder Cut. Why would his name be on the Snyder Cut in the first place? Zack Snyder was totally right to say, take these guys' names off my movie. They didn't want the movie to exist, and now they're not here, and the movie's going to happen, and they shouldn't be on the credits because they didn't do anything but hurt the movement for the movie to come out. So I don't think he's the bad guy here. I think he's a shrewd person that used his online attention to get his project made and to do what he wanted. The fact that some of them were bots doesn't mean that Zack Snyder was the person that bought those bots or whatever either. And 13% is not a lot. The typical for bots is like 5%, right? Well,
if you believe Twitter,
right? There are tons of see, I think Twitter has more than 5%.
Oh yeah,
like a lot more. You can't turn a tweet without seeing a stupid bot reminding you to do something. So I think that's a lot more than 5% on average. I think that a lot of these companies don't want to admit it anyways. I think they use bots in their marketing campaigns and they just don't want to admit it. So this article comes out a year after it should have come out. I'm echoing, aren't I?
Yeah, you're echoing.
It's not me.
I am not hearing an echo.
Test.
Is it you?
I heard an echo from Matt. I'm echoing too.
I'm hearing echoes.
I'm not hearing any echoes. That's weird. Vader, are you hearing echoes?
I am hearing echoes.
I'm hearing echoes from everyone but Matt.
It just randomly started up when Brian was talking.
Yeah.
And the chat is hearing echo too.
This is weird.
Are you using Streamlabs or OBS?
Brian, I believe, is using an OBS Ninja.
No, I'm using regular OBS.
Using regular OBS. Are we still getting an echo, guys?
Yep.
Test 1 2.
Test.
Yeah,
Test
Vader
1 2.
echoes.
Everybody but Kadish is echoing.
Yeah, everybody but Kadish.
That is weird. Well, I'm glad that I don't have an echo. At least something goes right. So, Brian, first of all, I just want to make a point that if the producers produced, the original Justice League movie, and that was what Snyder initially meant it to be, then that was the movie they produced, and they shouldn't have had their names taken off the film.
Yeah, but it wasn't though. Halfway through the movie, he split. The studio refused to give him the extra time he needed when his family crisis happened. They wanted to rush the movie out. They hired another director.
Well, I mean, we're going to get into the details on this, but I'm just saying that they produced the footage that he used to make his cut outside of the reshoots.
Yeah, no, they didn't want his movie to be made though.
It doesn't matter. They still produced it during production.
No, see, some of the footage was theirs, but they actively fought against his version of the movie.
It doesn't matter. They still were responsible for getting it made. But anyway, we'll get into that in a little bit. I want to get into Mexican Iron Man's thoughts on this article. Mexican Iron Man
First of all, am I echoing?
We're all echoing.
Yeah, we're all echoing.
Hey, Matt, maybe we should each pop out and pop back in because it's going to be.
Give it a
Otherwise, the
shot.
whole show. I know you don't hear an echo, but everybody else is echoing.
All right, give it a shot. We'll do a quick reset, and you guys will be stuck with me for a minute as everyone comes back in. But we've actually got a lot of ground to cover with this Snyderverse story.
Test one.
I don't hear an echo.
Echo's gone.
Sweet.
Echo's gone.
Test one. Hello.
Mexican Iron Man for the win.
It's a good call, man.
If you produce enough shows on enough YouTube channels, tricks of the trade.
Well done.
Yeah, I was on that happened to me with on the show with Danny Trejo on Midnight's Edge. Okay, so amongst all of you, I agree with everything so far. My perspective is going to be a bit interesting because of this whole group. I'm the biggest, or have been the biggest Snyder fanboy. I was absolutely part of the Snyder Brigade. I absolutely was part of the Twitter mob on Twitter, and I definitely was standing there horrified when the thing went down on that fandom fundraiser. Where he disavowed his ties to geeks and gamers.
Yeah.
Shockingly in horror, I was standing there. I was hoping and waiting that Uche on his side would bring me in. And then I watched the whole thing explode. I am absolutely one of those Snyder Uber fanboys, Snyderverse. I think I'm more in PTSD, and I think I'm more now in Snyder recovery. I absolutely loved the Snyder cuts.
Yeah, same.
I absolutely loved it. I even liked BVS when it was redone. But all that is to say three things. I want to go back to the Rolling Stone article because to me there's three things. And when I read this article, which we covered the other night on Midnight's Edge After Dark with Tom Connors, for me it's a very introspective thing because when I look at this piece, I think you got to take Rolling Stone with a grain of salt. That's my first thing, okay? Because that's just Rolling Stone.
It's Rolling Stone.
It's Rolling Stone. It's not like
a paragon of truth, bro.
But also I think there is a lot of truth in this article. And so, where's the real truth? I don't know. Somewhere between fantasy and reality.
Yeah.
But so that's my first comment. But the other two comments I want to make is that having been one of those fanboys for Snyder, I absolutely agree with what Matt started with at the beginning, that whether you call him shrewd or manipulative or leader of the fandom, if you want to be, or guy who's trying to express his creative thing, wherever you're at with him, he knows how to trigger people like me that bought into the whole Snyderverse thing, because we did. I've been very, very introspective lately because I really do see myself as being in a post-traumatic Snyderverse thing, because I felt burned when that thing happened with Geeks and Gamers, severely burned. And frankly, I'm not. If you look at the body of work, his casting choices, if you look at the body of work, it's been overhyped. I mean, it really has. And literally, I dare say that I think I was delusional for being such a hardcore Snyder boy. And I just had to come to terms with it, because when you sit back and you look at, like Crimson was saying, like Brian said, it's just, when you look back, when he gets it, the visuals are great, and when he gets it right, he pretty much has to follow the comic book exactly, almost like frame by frame by frame by frame.
That's true.
Because once he gets beyond that, he's lost, and he's so obvious he gets lost quick. And I really think that what he's doing and maybe it's a self-preservation strategy. I don't know what it is. I'm not falling for it any longer. Because I think he's done more harm than good. When I had to look at why I was so fanboying over Snyder, and this is just sort of me having my own realization, I'm a DC kid. I am not a Marvel kid. I did not read Marvel comic books growing up. I'm DC. I am Green Lantern. I am Batman. If you go to the first floor, I've got, what should be a China cabinet, has action figures and collectibles, and everything's DC.
Same.
My name might be Mexican Iron Man, but that's only because if there were two characters that I liked in the Marvel Universe, Iron Man was one of them, and he's a businessman. And one of my clients actually gave me the name and when I was doing their taxes, they said, "Hey, you're Mexican. You're kind of cocky and aggressive. You're like that Tony Stark guy." And I'm like, "Really?"
Same.
And so my client one of my clients called me Mexican Iron Man, and and then it stuck on YouTube when I brought it up on the live stream. Anyway, I'm digressing. I'm a DC guy, and I think what happened with me and a lot of us DC, and I'm just going to speak for me. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think a lot of my fellow Snyder boy and gals, we were so thirsty and hungry for a DC universe or a DC world, and we were watching all of these Marvel characters, A-list, B-list, C-list, get their due or get their treatment or whatnot. $1 billion here, 500 million movie there, everybody merchandise there. And here, what I thought as a kid would be the holy grail of superheroes. Your Batman, your Superman. You were just kind of like, I don't know, and then all these other characters were just never done right. And truth be told, even in the Snyder Cut, I would argue that even the other characters beyond those weren't done right. So I think that I think Snyder's got to go. And this is spoken as a former Snyder guy. And I hope this campaign dies. I'm really tired about hearing about him. He has poor casting choices. He has poor story choices. And the best thing to happen to DC characters would be a reboot and a fresh start.
So one of the things I want to talk about here is kind of like the timeline and how Snyder planned this campaign out in order to realize his vision of this film, because it is actually quite masterful, and it deals with a lot of kind of like behind the scenes Hollywood politicking and stuff like that. And the complete picture was not clear until this article came out. And one of the interesting things I found out about this article in conjunction with some of the other stuff I've read is that so Zack Snyder started off as Warner's golden boy, right? He'd done 300. He'd done like all these big movies for Warner Brothers, which were very successful. Watchmen was like a big hit. And when they brought him on to do the Man of Steel, the success of that movie led Warner's to give Snyder the reins to kind of be like the Kevin Feige of the DC universe within Warner Brothers. That was a big position. And he was the one who came up with the strategy of like, let's do Justice League and break them out into like individual movies, and let's have like a darker, more serious tone as opposed to Marvel's lighter, more comedic tone and all this other stuff. And so Snyder was really the one responsible for the early incarnation of the DCEU that we got. And he was also the one who approved all the casting choices for these different characters and all this other stuff. So we can thank him for like Ezra Miller and Amber Heard and yada yada. But one of the interesting things about this is that so like the launch of the Snyderverse, quote unquote Snyderverse, in earnest was Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, right? And when that movie failed to perform, it spooked the executives because they basically staked a lot of stuff on Snyder and his vision. And around that time, Snyder hired a PR firm to try to counteract a lot of the bad publicity that Batman v Superman was getting. And as he went into Justice League, like they did some offshoots with like Wonder Woman and Aquaman and stuff like that. But as they went into Justice League, Snyder was under a lot of pressure from Warner Brothers to change things up because the audience reaction to Batman v Superman shook their belief in his vision. And so Snyder was dealing with a lot of interference from the studio at this point. And by the time he got into post-production, the initial test screening, his initial cut, which was something like, like 4 hours long or something like that, was really hard for the studio to get behind. And so what happened is, to the public was under the impression that it was only after Snyder left because of his daughter's untimely demise that Whedon was brought in to kind of fix the movie. But actually, what happened was Warner Brothers brought Whedon in early on in the post-production process after the first disastrous test screening. And Whedon was giving Snyder notes, and Snyder wasn't agreeing with these notes, and they were having some conflict behind the scenes because initially Joss Whedon was a consultant on this movie.
It's a punch-up.
Yeah, he was brought in to kind of like help fix it. And the writing on the wall that Snyder was seeing was that Whedon was being placed in there to eventually replace him, take over the movie. And, being the savvy businessman that Zack Snyder is, like he saw this happening. And so what Zack Snyder started doing is he started priming the pump to try to protect himself from this. And then what eventually happened with his daughter's death, tragic death, was that he decided, you know what, I don't have the energy to fight this battle right now, so I'm just going to step away and let them do what they were going to do anyway. But he took some precautions when he did that. He basically, and this is how you know that he had planned this out. He took with him the hard drives with all of his footage, his original footage, with him. Okay, and that was studio property. He wasn't legally allowed to it, even though he said he's contractually allowed. But the reason that you know that he had planned out this whole release of Snyder Cut thing is because he made sure that he had all the footage to make his cut of the movie. And that's the biggest telltale sign. And what happened is like he worked in conjunction with his PR firm, who I believe is the same PR firm that Amber Heard hired for her trial with Johnny Depp. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but I'm going to assume it is. So like he used this PR firm to basically start priming the pump for his eventual return, because all he wanted to do at this point, because he knew like he was done with Warner Brothers, is to make sure that his vision of the movie that he wanted to make got out there. And so he started pressuring Warner Brothers through this AstroTurf social media campaign to pay attention to him and eventually use it to leverage into getting his movie made, right, the way he wanted to do it. And it was a very masterful way of going about doing it. It took a couple years, but he eventually built up this organic fan base. And he got Warner Brothers to pony up $70 million to finish a movie that had already bombed at the box office, which to me is just crazy. But he was also shooting stuff in his backyard, like he had this whole thing orchestrated from the beginning. And so now that this article came out, we have that whole timeline of like how he went about setting this up and making it happen. So I want to get your guys' thoughts on just how Machiavellian this was and all the studio kind of behind the scenes stuff. Mike, let's start with you.
So I agree with your assessment, and in particularly because are you aware of the special event that he had? It was at 8 a.m. on a Sunday where he asked all of his fans, and he had certain scenes where he did his own screenings of certain segments. Are you aware of that? When he did,
I believe I remember that when it was happening. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that there were things like that. I completely agree with the timeline, and it would being in recovery as a Snyder boy. I think what stands out to me most is that the work should really speak for itself. It shouldn't be about PR and marketing, but that's what happened. It became about hype, and it became about this process. And I bought into it in large measure. And I think the biggest reason why, like I said a moment ago, is because I think Snyder looked at guys like me, fans like me, and we're pretty we're pretty easy to lead and guide in an environment where Marvel's doing so much and DC has so little.
All right, Brian, do you agree with my assessment of this timeline?
Not exactly.
Or is my anti-Snyder underwear showing again?
Your anti-Snyder underwear is showing. Mexican Iron Man, bro. I think you're being duped again, but this time by Rolling Stone.
Really?
Yeah. let me explain. And I'm not a Snyder fanboy, but I do like Snyder's vision of DC much better than the studio's ridiculous corporate pro Marvel clone version. I'll tell you that right now. The studio got involved really early on because BVS did not perform the way Age of Ultron did, and they wanted to mimic the success of Disney and Marvel. So in order to do so, they brought in Whedon, who did Age of Ultron, as a punch-up guy. Really, it was the studio interfering the way the studio does. Warner Brothers, prior to the merger, was their own worst enemy. They are the worst at making decisions based on movie properties. The only company worse than Warner Brothers prior to the merge was probably MGM. They do not know how to manage their own property. They just don't. They don't know how to manage the DCU films. They put Snyder in charge, and the second there was a hiccup, they were like, oh, let's hire people from Marvel to come fix it for us and make it more lighter and fun and funnier. And they didn't buy into it. And Walter Hamada is a talentless suit that the second he sees any kind of trouble, any kind of hiccup in his giddy up, in his plan, he tries to mimic and copy another studio. Jeff Johns is a talentless hack that copies other comic book artists and somehow got put in a place of leadership and then pushed his own comic books over everything else. Damn the IP, damn the fan base. It's all about him getting his bag. And you have you have Zack Snyder, who has diabolical streak in him, who couldn't fight the battle that he knew he was going to have to rage with these talentless hacks at the head of the studio at the time. So he took off. So your timeline is right there. What is not right is that I don't think that Zack Snyder, in my opinion, planned the Snyder Cut release. I think that he was in a place where he was like, I wanted to make this movie. I wanted to finish my vision. I know it's not going to happen because these talentless, horrible, anti-art, anti-DC suits at the top of this organization are going to wreck and completely ruin my project and Disneyfy it. They're literally hiring people that worked on Marvel. So he took his stuff that he can maybe down the road have some kind of director's cut. I don't think it was a plan at the time. I think it happened naturally. And then maybe later on it became a plan. But when he left with that footage, I don't think it was a plan. I think it was just him trying to protect what he had already made.
So I do agree that under AT&T, Warner Brothers was one of the worst run studios in Hollywood. Like, a lot of their decision making defies logic. But I think it's pretty clear from the timeline that this investigation shows us is that Snyder, once he realized that Whedon was coming in to replace him, started planning a way to get his final vision of the movie made. Now, Kyle, what do you think of this timeline? And do you have any respect for Zack Snyder as a evil genius?
Well, from everything that I've been hearing, and I am very much the outsider in this, I don't pay attention to a lot of the inner politics when it comes to Hollywood and studio decisions. I'll criticize them when I hear about them, but from everything, it sounds like there was a little bit of pushback on one side and then pushback from the other side, and then that just kept leading to more pushback and more escalation, and eventually it escalated to the whole release the Snyderverse debacle, where Snyder was able to push the studio into a corner and effectively conned them out of an extra $70 million for a pet project that just went on to another stupid movie. But I wouldn't say that Snyder is really an evil genius, more like a petulant child who just really wanted to have his toy because someone else came in and interfered. That's not fair. It's his turn to play with the thing. All the while, though, I'm reminded of a clip that I saw recently. I don't know if anyone here used to watch the old show Duckman from the 90s. I came across a clip of an episode where Duckman, who is, if you're not familiar with the show, it's this old show about a cynical private detective who would go around and solve various problems, but it's really social commentary where he gets to complain about various minutiae. At one point, he got to take over a Hollywood studio and paid a first-time no-name actress like $100 million or something for a role. And he pointed out that this is an industry that has no idea what's good. They just rely on basic numbers to determine quality. So if you just shovel a bunch of money at a particular project, you can in fact buy credibility. If I can find it, I'll share it on Twitter later. But that just seems to be this entire situation in a nutshell. You've got a studio that doesn't really understand what good writing is or what good production is or how to properly manage a studio. And you've got a director who knows how to make something look good, who knows how to make the visuals really stand out. But when it comes to actually running things, when it comes to actually telling a coherent story, really needs someone to hold his hand and walk him through the process, which is why I think 300 was a good movie. But everything in the DC extended universe has been one form of disaster after another. I've got personally, I've got no faith in his ability to come up with a project and effectively manage it and tell a good story on his own.
All right, so Matt Vader, we've talked about Zack Snyder movies numerous times on the podcast.
Mhm.
One of your favorite movies of the last year was the Snyder Cut version of Justice League.
It was.
Does this impact your view of that movie at all, knowing kind of like what Snyder had to do in order to make that happen?
No, not at all. Not at all. I still like the Snyder Cut. It's still one of my favorite movies from the COVID times. And you know, this is what it is. I'm really fascinated by the whole I'm gonna go hire an army of bots to get my stuff trending. That's fascinating to me. And it just that there is that ability for companies to do that, and that there's companies out there that specialize in this kind of thing, kind of disheartens me a little bit because
it's cheating.
It's cheating. It's very much cheating.
Wait a minute. We're not playing on the same ground.
Because, you know, what if I wanted to get the salty nerd whatever trending? Do we have to go spend money and hire one of these
$100,000? You'll get it trending. Bro.
Yeah. You know, it's just I want to do it naturally. I want it to be organic. I want it to be from real people. And I think that's how we all feel about that kind of thing. And to do something like this with these fake bot armies is very strange to me. And it also completely makes me understand that these other companies out there are completely doing the same thing, whether they say they are or not. Star Wars is probably doing it. You know, Marvel's probably doing it. There's so much fan
discourse
about a lot of this stuff
too, though.
Yeah, but you know.
It wasn't.
Are you going to go spend $100,000 on bots?
No. But like, let's say you have 100,000 people, and they want to go spend $10 for bots to push a tweet up or whatever.
Sure.
If enough people do that, it's gonna. You know, it didn't have to necessarily be Zach or the PR firm. It could have just.
I mean, I know that we all know people and enough people that we could get something sort of trending. You know, we've done it with the Gina Carano stuff.
Right.
You know, that's organic. That's for real. You know. But for these guys to cheat with that stuff it's very strange.
And this article makes it clear that in the investigation, it's very clear that a PR firm and people who were aligned and being paid by Snyder were the ones responsible for orchestrating a lot of this stuff. Snyder might not have gotten his hands dirty, but he definitely hired the people to do this for him.
Now, but you got to remember the article's a hit piece, bro.
Well, I do want to make this point. At what point does a hit piece like speak the truth? You know,
I don't know though. When it's totally biased, it's hard to take.
We are going to get into this, and there is a little bit of bias here, but I want to talk a little bit about the character of Zack Snyder, okay? Because I think that goes towards whether or not you believe this article or not. Now, I believe that you can be a hack, right? You can be a terrible storyteller, filmmaker, whatever, and still be a good person. Like just because like you lack the talent to make good art doesn't mean that, you know, you're not a likable guy, that you're not a good guy. And for the longest time, I was like, yeah, I don't like Zack Snyder's movies, but he seems like a cool dude. But the stuff that I've learned from this article really puts him in a very negative, toxic perspective for me. And I'll tell you, I'll illustrate it, and I'll go around and get your guys' reaction to it. So in the article, they talk about how the Zack Snyder fan base, the Snyder cultists, some of these bots, whatever, were trying to basically screw with Warner Brothers by review bombing Kong versus Godzilla, which was like their big COVID release, right? And what they were trying to do was show Warner Brothers the power of the Zack Snyder army by trying to tank one of their big, you know, streaming and theater releases. And the guy who directed the Godzilla versus Kong personally contacted Zack Snyder and was like, hey, bro, your fans are like review bombing my movie. Could you just come out publicly and tell them to, you know, stop and give it a fair shake? And Snyder was like, bro, I got no control over my fans. Sorry. So he let the review bombing continue because he wanted to hurt Warner Brothers, right? But then, like, you could say, like, okay, maybe he doesn't have control over his fan base. That's a legit thing to say. But then in the article, he also talks about how he threatened to sick his fan base on Jeff Johns and these other producers and executives if they didn't remove their names from his Snyder Cut. And when they slow walked it, he did tell his fan base to attack. He said, like, and I've been on the receiving end of this too. Like when I was going after Birds of Prey and a couple other Snyder produced movies.
Oh, I hated that movie.
I would get targeted by these bot accounts that were very toxic.
Which movie?
Birds of Prey.
Okay. All right. Sorry.
All right. I would get targeted by these bot accounts, and the PR firm that Zack Snyder hired would use their bots to try to squash any negative publicity for a Snyder-produced movie. Because you got to remember that the Harley Quinn, the Suicide Squad, all that stuff was part of Snyder's legacy at Warner Brothers. And if they underperformed, that would give Warner Brothers an excuse not to do the Snyder Cut, right? So they had to viciously protect all the stuff that Snyder was involved in before he left WB in order to get the Snyder Cut made. And so you have these 13% bot accounts that would go after anyone critical of any of Snyder's work at Warner Brothers. And I was one of those. I got hit twice by the Snyder cultists, and it was hard. It wasn't fun. I just ignored them. But at the same time, Snyder is specifically targeting certain executives and producers with these bot accounts after he said, I have no control over my fans. And he's turning his fan base against people. And so this shows how mean-spirited this guy is, how he doesn't care about the feelings and livelihoods of other people. He doesn't care about their safety or their mental state. And, you know, he showed his true colors on that live stream where he came out publicly against Geeks and Gamers after they raised all this money for his charity and stuff like that. He's not a good person. I'm convinced of this. I believe he's a toxic person. I believe he's a vindictive person. I believe he's a very negative person. And there's also a lot of evidence to show that he has orchestrated the stuff with Ray Fisher, like collaborated with him in order to go after Whedon to punish him for taking over and to go after Warner Brothers by calling them racist and stuff like that.
I don't think you have to
as a way
coordinate
to
to go
bully
after
them.
Whedon.
Maybe not, but I think that him and Ray Fisher, like he basically influenced Ray Fisher to basically be at the vanguard of his attack against Joss Whedon and stuff like that.
I can buy that.
And he rewarded Ray Fisher's loyalty by casting him in his Netflix stuff. So because he's got a big part in Rebel Moon, and that could be a big franchise for Netflix. And so like I truly believe that Zack Snyder is a bad person who is wielding his social media power in a very destructive and toxic way in order to basically get what he wants. So Crimson, what do you think of that? Do you think I'm on base, or do you think I'm way off topic?
Well, I try to look at people as positively as possible. I try to give them the benefit of the doubt, but between all the allegations, between the Geeks and Gamers thing, between how he seems to treat other people in the industry, I don't think you're wrong. I don't think he's a very good person. I'm not going to take the Rolling Stone article as definitive proof that he did all this stuff. Like, right. I'd like to see something a little more concrete than a reporter who said, look at this, he did it. But it would not surprise me at all if all of this was true and he was just effectively throwing a tantrum at anyone who dared disrespect his work or his vision. I don't really think I have a lot of faith in the guy's personality.
All right. Well, Brian, you seem to be on the counter end of my points. So let's hear your rebuttal.
Yeah. So I don't think that Zack Snyder is like this nice person per se. I don't know the man. But I do know that there can be two bad people in a room, and one of those people could be worse than the other. And so I'm going to root for the person who is not the multi-billion-dollar international soul-sucking company that is Warner Brothers and the trash people like Jeff Johns and Walter Hamada. Sorry. Maybe Zack Snyder isn't a good person. Absolutely. That could be possible. I don't know the guy. I know for a fact that his fans are like gnarly as hell, because I've put out videos where I criticized like the Shazam's numbers and stuff like that, and I got lambasted. We had a video that we were going to be so proud of that came on the Prime channel where we made this whole video about why Shazam failed. And the second we brought up Zack Snyder's movement, the video bombed. Somehow it had like 700 plus dislikes in the first like 3 minutes, which is not possible. So like we knew we got like hit with bots, and so I've been on the receiving end of that, and I get it. But I'm rooting for the lesser of the two baddies then, because I think Warner Brothers has been nothing but a destructive force for DC, and I wish that they didn't have DC.
Yep.
I just wish they didn't, because I'm a DC guy like you, Mexican Iron Man. I got the Iron Man heart right there.
I saw that, bro.
Iron Man's my favorite Marvel character because I identify with Iron Man, right? I'm the guy tinkering with stuff in his garage, just trying to be a superhero. But as far as comics goes, I mean, if you can see my walls right now, it's all DC, baby. I'm a DC guy, and Warner Brothers has been the worst thing that happened to DC, since they started making DC films. They don't know how to make movies, and they keep making movies that have no ties to each other, and they're just bad. They're bad at making movies. They're bad at making DC movies in particular. And so I'm...
Brian, are you saying that in your argument, you're saying that the lesser of two evils, and I agree with you, Warner Brothers is absolutely horrifically managed at the executive level, but are you saying you'd rather see Snyder come back in some way, shape, or form, despite of or regardless, irrespective of that? Because I'm out with Snyder. I mean,
but before you answer that, Brian, I also want to ask you, at what side do you come down on when Zack Snyder's using his power to destroy another filmmaker's premiere movie and potentially tank his career?
Yeah, Snyder's apathy with the Kong versus Godzilla movie.
Yeah, that was not cool.
That was not cool. 100% not cool. I don't agree with that. But I'm also trying to put my opinions of the movies aside. Like, I don't like some Zack Snyder films, so I'm not gonna add to that. I didn't like Kong versus Godzilla, which I actually did like that movie. But I'm not gonna let my opinions of the movies be a factor in the fact that Rolling Stone put this article out a year after they should have. They purposely timed it as a hit piece to come out on that time, right before the release, right before Comic-Con, to get the most amount of views, to do the most amount of damage to Snyder. And I'm not saying, Mexican Iron Man, that I want Snyder to come back. But let me ask you a question. Out of all the DC movies made as part of a franchise, the ones that he started, even if he's not a good storyteller, but the ones he started, the darker tone and all that with Man of Steel and like the characters he brought in, were the best DC movies that was following a cohesive franchise storyline that DC's ever come out with.
Right.
And the actors involved, Affleck, Fisher, I mean, literally, Cavill, all of them, they all decided they would all come back for the Snyder Cut reshoots, but before Snyder Cut was back on the playing board, they wanted nothing to do with Warner Brothers or DC, nothing to do with it. And now they're like, oh well, we'll do some more stuff, So I'm not saying I want Snyder back, but I think that the article specifically is so anti-Snyder and so biased towards Snyder, and so obviously hit piece that it's got to bring into question the information that it provides and how accurate that information is, how much they're leaving out, not what they're saying, but how much they're leaving out of that to make sure that Snyder and his movement or whatever feels the most amount of pain from that article.
So before we get to Mike, I just want to say that the timing of the article is quite opportunistic, but you also have to realize that there was an investigation going on, and they waited until the investigation was complete before they reported on it. So even if it was complete like months ago, they probably timed this thing to hurt Zack as much as possible. Considering what Zack did to them, I think tit for tat is perfectly fine. And before we get to Mike, we got a quick super chat here. Dash Attack for $4.99. Do you think Rebel Moon has a shot at being a Star Wars competitor, regardless of how good a man Zack Snyder might be? Will the media attack the film? I think because it's a Zack Snyder film, it's going to suck. Personally, it's going to look great, but it's not going to be any good. And I doubt it's going to launch the franchise that Netflix hopes it
Well,
does.
he's not the writer, though, right?
Yes, he is. He's basically just copying the Seven Samurai. It's the Seven Samurai in space.
Right. So it might be good. If he actually copies a good writer, it might be good.
Watching Crimson wince just then was like telling. It's like, oh,
yeah. But I want to get to Mexican Iron Man's reaction. Mexican Iron Man does this.
I can't remember the question. Sorry about that.
I'm going to ask you. Does this information about Zack Snyder color your view of him as a person?
It was already dark and just getting darker. And when I read the article, I someone sent it to me before I even knew we were going to review it on Midnight's Edge last week. And I went from this guy up here that was super excited for all of these fan cuts, and you got to look at this guy. And I've seen this guy in action, the Geeks and Gamers thing. Yeah, I'm a hardcore aggressive personality. I'm not a beta. I'm an alpha. And I have a problem with beta ass biatches, and that's what he is. And to me, the Godzilla thing was inexcusable. I think a stand-up guy who is okay, let's just say me and Matt aren't the best of friends, but Matt's got a picture coming out. He's at the same studio I'm at. I got my issues or whatever. I mean, don't we all want to win? I mean, just professional courtzy. He could have at least dropped for all the times that he drops a Twitter thing. The fact that he didn't do that, and I love the Godzilla Kong movie. I was excited for it to come out when he wasn't a stand-up guy. That reminded me of how he's just everything else is in line with how he is, how he behaves, and it's just delusion to the point to where now the stuff with Amber Heard. Come on, he picked her. The stuff with Ezra, he picked her. What he did at Geeks and Gamers Live, that's him. What he did, this article, it's him. So I can't give him, I'm having a hard time giving him any benefit of the doubt. And like I said, I'm speaking from a place where of all five of us, I know for a fact that I am the biggest historical Snyder fanboy, Snyder brothers of all of us that are on this panel right now.
You are definitely the biggest Snyder boy.
Because if you go to my Twitter feed, there's stuff in there and groups and Facebook. I was in the Facebook groups and
all that weird like homoerotic art of you and Snyder. That was interesting.
No, wait, what? No.
I'm not saying I saved it to my computer or anything. I'm just saying it was interesting.
I'm not saying I'm looking at it right now.
No.
I'm just saying.
Oh, anyway, sorry about it. I'm just getting emotional about it. It's just been constantly disappointing. And for me, this Rolling Stone article is the bookend for me. Time to move on. I don't want to hear, see anything. I know Warner, I just want them to shelve everything right now because I would rather things. There's only one thing that I maybe want. I'd like to see Henry Cavill in a positive Superman movie.
Yes.
Okay.
Please.
If I get only one thing in the next 4 to 7 years,
in the next 2 hours, bro, you might hear it in the next 2 hours.
Well, one thing that I would like is give me heaven, but don't give me Super Batman.
I just want to see another Superman movie with Henry Cavill.
I want to see another Superman movie, but I want it to be positive. I want the Superman to do for us. I want Henry Cavill to put on that outfit and do for us what Top Gun Maverick did in another way.
Amen to that, brother.
Oh, yes.
I agree.
Right, so speaking of moving on, I think that we've covered this article enough, but it in a weird way, I have far more respect for Zack Snyder as a cutthroat Hollywood player now than I did before. So even though I hate his movies and I don't like him personally, I can respect the
hustle
that this guy has put in. The hustle, exactly. We got a super chat real quick. 52 movies a year for $9.99. Thank you, sir. WB
nice.
Business model for movies. Good movie, blah movie, poop movie, great movie, poop movie, blah movie, poop movie, good movie. It's like poetry. It repeats itself.
So true.
It's very true.
It's so true.
And I'd also
movie.
like to point
they
out.
might be starting something good. Oh, no.
Yep. I'd also like to point out that we have 36 people live watching the stream. Thank you all so much for being here. And thank you all for the super chat so far. We really appreciate it. And thank you for being here and participating in the chat. We love you guys all. Thank you so much for your participation. Now let's move on to something completely different. House of the Dragon. Speaking of WB, so we've got a number of fantasy themed trailers that came out this week.
Ooh, yeah.
And I wanted to talk a little bit about House of the Dragon, which is the prequel to HBO's Game of Thrones. We've got basically the dramatization of the Dance of the Dragons, which is a civil war within Westeros that happened a couple hundred years before the events of Game of Thrones. And it's all political maneuvering. It's about like the House Targaryen getting split up and fighting amongst themselves. And it eventually leads to the death of the dragons. And so from this point on, Westeros is dragonless, and magic kind of filters away and all this other stuff. And after the disastrous season 8 of Game of Thrones, it's been hard for anyone to really get excited about a new kind of like Game of Thrones thing. But they recently released a full trailer for the season, which starts at the end of August, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to admit, guys, I thought it looked pretty darn good. I was
really did.
impressed.
I still want to do this yesterday with you, Kadish, or Thursday.
Yeah, I know, but Orville went long. Now, hopefully you guys got a chance to see the trailer so we don't have to play it and get demonetized. But I just want to kind of get your reaction to it and see if you're actually looking forward to it. Because I was of the position that nobody's going to watch this show because season 8 was so terrible. But after watching the trailer, I was like, you know what? I'm going to watch that. I want to see it because it looks good. Matt Vader 74. What do you think of House of the Dragon?
Yeah, it was really, you and I went to coffee Monday morning and we had that very talk. You're like, oh, nobody's going to watch this thing. It's not going to be any good. It's not going to win anybody back, yada, yada, yada. And all those things might be true because I went on to Twitter when I got home Monday and I had several conversations with people about they have absolutely zero interest, and season 8 completely destroyed any faith they ever had. But, in my mind, the people that ruined season 8, they have nothing to do with this, as far as I know, right? It's correct. And, I'm not a book reader. I don't know anything about Game of Thrones other than what we got from the original series. And coming into it as just, a fan of the TV show, I'm looking forward to this. Give me some more Game of Thrones. Give me some dragons. It looks like the quality level is going to be up there where we want it.
Yeah.
Are they going to throw some woke stuff in there that we don't really want? Probably. But I don't care. I just want to be entertained. And if I can be entertained with the show about knights and people in armor and armies fighting dragons and I'm in. That's all I want. Yeah. Entertain me. And if it gets weird, then we'll call it out at that point. But this looks fun to me, and I hope it's good. And I can't wait to talk about it every week on the podcast. So
we are going to be doing we're going to be doing a regular Monday review of this. Real quick, JT Gunn, Late Night with Cap, $2. Really enjoying the new stream structure. Thank you, sir. I've super chat.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, JT. I appreciate that, man. I've talked about it before. We can't if you're unwilling to watch something, then it's really hard to judge it and critique it, right? So,
right.
This is something that we kind of almost have to watch, doing what we do every week with this kind of stuff. So, I'm in for now, and I hope it doesn't suck like the Orville does. So, I guess we'll find out.
So I want to go to Crimson as a book reader. You and me are big fans of the books. And, one of the great things about reading, A Song of Ice and Fire was getting like this history of Westeros. And a big part of that history was the Dance with Dragons. It's mentioned multiple times throughout the series. And I did not realize that was what they were going with until this trailer came out. When I saw it, I was like, oh, they're doing a dance, the Dance of the Dragons. And so I'm like super excited about it. As a book reader, Crimson, what do you think of what you've seen so far? Do you think that this is the right way to go for the franchise? Because it is a prequel.
I think that of anything they could have done, a prequel is probably the safest option. Because at this point, the smart thing is to distance themselves from the ending. Everything that happened in season 8. You don't want to go with like 5 years later after that debacle that none of you liked. So if we just go back however many hundreds of years, that's probably the best thing for them to try to really reproach. Not to mention, it's going to give them excuse for lots of fighting and lots of dragons. So it's going to be really good eye candy, if nothing else. Now, I have not really watched Game of Thrones beyond season 1. I am still impatiently waiting for book number 6, although I've almost completely given up hope that that's ever going to come out.
Right.
So I am not in the target audience for this kind of thing. It's like I've not been paying attention to House of Dragons. I haven't been eagerly anticipating any kind of updates that could happen. I'm going to be honest, I didn't even see the trailer. So, yes, I know.
What a shame.
I'm like, if it's good, it's good. But at this point, I don't really have a lot of faith in the project as a whole. I imagine it's going to start off really well, and then the story is probably going to get overly complicated or confusing or convenient, and the quality is just going to taper off slowly throughout the season or however long the show ends up going.
Okay. So, Brian, are you going to support an evil, mismanaged, multi-billion-dollar corporation by watching the show?
Yeah, listen, as I agree. Yeah, it's a horrible. Yeah, everything I said, it still stands. And I hated the last season of Game of Thrones. It was it was one of those. It was like one of those disappointing moments you had. I don't know if you guys ever saw that show Lost.
Yeah,
but Lost was one of those things that my friend convinced me to buy into. Like literally, like, no, you got to watch this, man. It's genius. My super pothead friend who was crashing on my couch for like 6 months. He's like, bro, listen, I'm watching this show. It's Lost. It's so trippy, bro. It's amazing. You're gonna watch it. And I kept telling him I'm not trying to get sucked into like another bad TV show. And he convinced me to watch it, and I get super invested in this thing, right? Same thing would happen with Game of Thrones. Then at the very end, they're in purgatory. Spoiler alert, sorry. And it made me want to break my TV and punch my friend in the face and then kick him out of my house. and then watching Game of Thrones was the same way. My wife and my buddy was like, dude, you gotta watch this Game of Thrones. I'm like, listen, I read the books and I'm not really interested, and I don't want to really want to watch a TV show. I know they're not gonna do it justice. And then I watched the first season and they did it justice and they did it right. And dude, I mean, it was really good. And then it started to peak a little bit, but I'm like, it's cool. I'm still invested in the story. And then season 8 happened. You're like, what happened? Whose idea was this? It's like you had a storyboard of possible endings, and you said, okay, guys, which one is the worst ending possible? And they all agreed on the worst ending possible and gave it to us. But watching this, some of the best part of Game of Thrones was the stuff with the Targaryens and how much you want to know more about them, because all we really got was flashbacks or Daenerys' brother, right? I mean, what do they say? Why is Game of Thrones so appealing to like average people? Dragons and titties, right? Well, we're gonna get a whole lot of dragons, and I'm assuming a whole lot of titties. So, sign me up. And also,
I'm in, man. I'm in 100%.
Yeah, dragons and titties. It also reminded me, like, seeing them stand so close together, because I'm pretty sure the Targaryens are mostly inbred. It reminded me of that like Game of Thrones joke. It was like,
yeah.
How do you circumcise a Lannister? Kick his sister in the jaw. So listen, guys, if this is anything like the first 3 or 4 seasons of Game of Thrones, and it's all about the Targaryens and that whole time, and I honestly usually hate prequels, hate them. I have gone on record to say I don't want to watch prequels. I don't want studios to make prequels. But in this instance, I think Crimson is right. Going forward would be the worst mistake. Again, the worst thing you can do, because it was such a bad idea. You have to go back, and you have to go back far enough where the Game of Thrones doesn't, the actual story of Game of Thrones doesn't interfere. And I think this is one of those unique positions where it's the best thing to do. You can do it, and you have this whole story that you teased for like 8 seasons of Game of Thrones and never really got into. So sign me up, dude.
I have a quick question. What do you guys think? They've waited long enough to release this, or have we not gone long enough yet?
Yep.
Because there's still a lot of animosity out there about the original series. You know, I know it's there because people come at me all the time when I talk about this show.
Yeah.
Not watch it; it's terrible. Season 8. You know, so I don't know what the answer is about if they've waited long enough to finally put this out.
Yeah, well, let's ask Mike. Mike, what was your impression of the trailer, and do you think that they waited long enough to put out a sequel?
So when I first saw the trailer, unfortunately, I saw it on my cell phone, and it wasn't very impressive. In preparation for today's show, I watched it on my 82-inch screen with surround sound. I'm really excited to watch it. I was flat before, but I am excited. And I was pissed. I didn't read any of the books, but I did. I got way hard into the series. I saw every episode at least twice, and I made
crows before hoes, bro. Crows before hoes.
Every episode at least twice of except the last one of the last season. That one I watched once. The only time I went back and watched a little bit of it was when I was watching and I couldn't see shit, so I kept rewinding it.
Yeah, it was so dark.
It was so freaking dark.
What a stupid decision that was.
Absolutely, Brian. And you know what's interesting to me is that when I watched this trailer, I didn't see anything that was dark that I couldn't see. That alone makes me excited to watch. To watch it. I mean, that alone, and I'm like, you know what? And here's the other thing. I hate prequels. In fact, I was just reflecting on the excellent video that you guys put together, which we're going to discuss later in this show on the Star Trek stuff.
Oh, thanks.
I absolutely hate the concept of prequels, especially where there's canon and the real. I just hate that idea. But this time around, you know what? Frankly, there were so many references to what came before in the story and ages gone back. I'm looking forward to seeing this. I'm going to watch every episode. I'm excited, big time.
Amen.
Hardcore.
All right, so,
and I'm healed. Enough time has gone by that we can take the Band-Aid off.
Yes.
Okay. All right,
guys. So speaking of dragons, we've got a new trailer for the upcoming Dungeons and Dragons soft reboot movie entitled Dungeons and Dragons: Guardians of the Galaxy. Or I mean, Honor Among Thieves. So we got this trailer dropped yesterday at Comic-Con, and it's very much it looks like a Dungeons and Dragons movie, but it's set to a 70s rock song. And I felt like the music was very out of place for the visuals we were getting. And it's very jokey. It does feel like a Guardians of the Galaxy fantasy movie, It stars Chris Pine and Michelle Rodriguez and the guy from Detective Pikachu, this guy. And it's, I got to admit, I liked the trailer. I thought it was fun. But at the same time, I'm kind of like, this movie looks really dumb, but at least it looks better than the original Dungeons and Dragons movie.
Oh yeah.
But they replaced Jeremy Irons with Hugh Grant. Let's see if I can get him here. Yeah. It's the exact same character, right? I would have rather they just got Jeremy Irons to come back.
Is it the same character? Is this the sequel to the Jeremy
No.
It's
This
not
is something completely different.
No? Oh, okay.
I'm so glad.
So, the visuals look good. Everything about this looks like it's a fun movie, but I'm kind of lukewarm on it. I wanted to get your guys' impression. Matt Vader, what do you think of this?
I have 2 things to say about this. First off, is a question. Is Chris Pine in his Bruce Willis phase already?
No.
I mean, why is he in this movie?
Wow.
Sure.
Because he's getting paid, I think, $11.5 million for it.
He's getting paid. Yeah,
I mean,
it's actually $13.3 million plus back end.
I can see the Hugh Grant. I can understand why he's in this movie. I don't think he's been in anything, and since he got that hooker, in the 80s or whatever. But 90s. Okay, but Chris Pine, really, he's the main character of this thing. That blows my mind because This looks like complete hot trash. Okay, it looks terrible. I don't get impressed with fancy CGI graphics anymore. This is 2022. That is not a thing. This is not 2001. So I will say that them making creatures in the movie actually look like they come out of the Monster Manual that I used to play with back in the 80s.
Yeah,
is legit. There's some cool monsters in here that look like they did their actual research, and for that I'm happy. But I have not played Dungeons and Dragons since TSR actually owned the company, and that's really it. I mean, I don't know. I know Dungeons and Dragons is huge right now. The streaming stuff has brought the game back to the forefront, but I just have not been able to bring myself to get back into it. And I don't think this movie's gonna do that great. I really don't. It's a Dungeons and Dragons movie, so
yeah, maybe
it is what it is.
Mexican Iron Man. This reminded me of a live action Vox Machina. What were your thoughts on the trailer?
I think it looks good. I'm not a Dungeons and Dragons guy. Never played it as a kid. Had friends that did. I don't know. Here's my thing. I think it looks great or looks fun, but I'm a little bit worn out with fantasy movies and superhero movies that take the comedic type of thing. I want some real adventure. I want some real stakes. I want some real stories. I want some compelling action. I want some romance. I want bravery. I don't think I'm going to get any of that here.
You want to watch Princess Bride? Then that's what you want to watch.
You mean an actual good fantasy movie? Yeah.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, look, I'm gonna watch this because I go to the movies every week, and it's and I watch at least one movie on streaming and I try to get to the theater every week, so I watch a lot of movies. So I'm gonna watch it. So we'll see. But it's not like I'm not going to, but I'm kind of
Crimson, are you a Dungeons and Dragons player, and what do you think of this movie?
D&D player and Dungeon Master for a little while, actually.
Amen, brother.
Used to play Pathfinder every week. Tried 3.5. Did 4th edition for a game. Regretted it. Haven't tried 5 yet, but trying to work on building up a game right now with that, actually. But I thought the trailer was fun. I thought that it looked good, although if I can go ultra nerdy, oh my god, the druid transformed into an owl bear, and that's a monstrosity, and that's against the whole thing. It's supposed to be beast form. Anyway, I'm not actually one of them. I don't care. I just assume that the DM let them all have fun. So
yeah,
I do think that this is going to be a subpar movie, though. As much as I want this to be a fun fantasy adventure, because with D&D you have so much you can do. The script looks like it's following a proper D&D story. Our band of heroes screwed up and doomed the world, and now they've got to save it. That's great. I love that idea.
That's D&D.
But the problem is, I'm not sure that the writing is actually going to hold up for one reason or another, and not to the point where you've got to get into the minutia of D&D, because it is the most flexible game system of anything out there, to the point where you can straight up ignore the rules if the DM allows it. But the writing doesn't strike me as reliable. The thing that really has me worried is the last scene where they're discussing, Chris Pine's like, oh, I'm the guy who comes up with a plan. So if a plan fails, I come up with a new plan. Oh, so you write plans that fail. No, that's not what I said. I'm worried that it's going to become a story that's going to rely more on the jokes for memorabilia than actual character writing or universe building, or maybe even the visuals. And that has me worried. I'm not the type who complained about how Marvel has ruined movies because it's all about the comedy these days at the expense of story. Thor 4. But I do worry that they're going to over-focus on the jokes and not really try to capture the massive universe that they've got at their hands here.
Right on. Brian, what were your impressions of this trailer, and do you think it's a Guardians of the Galaxy ripoff?
Yeah, Crimson is pretty spot on there. I didn't get into D&D until very recently. My brother was constantly telling me how he's surprised I didn't play D&D, and it probably had something to do with my ultra strict, religious father or something. But realistically, the reason I didn't play D&D when I was younger was because I just didn't have fans that were into it. We were more into science fiction and comics and less into the fantasy side. And while a lot of the nerddom does intersect when it comes to fantasy, comics, and science fiction, a lot of your preferences are formed when you're younger. And like if you're already into like the Iron Man and less into the Thor, then you're going to be less on the fantasy side and more on the science fiction side. But then recently I got into some of the online stream stuff while I was working. Actually, I'd be sitting there editing a video and I'm just like bored out of my mind editing this hour-long doc. And I'm just like clipping out Shane's breath and like constantly adjusting things. I'm just so bored. And I can't put on anything that I actually have to watch, but I do want to put something I can listen to. And I throw on like Critical Role or something. And I can listen to the DM explain how it's going. And it was fascinating. And I really got into it. So when this trailer dropped, I was like, hell yes. And yeah, I do think it's a little on the jokey side. But the fact that they're starting with that quest where it's like they got exactly what Crimson said, and I'm not going to reiterate, but like that is very D&D, the way they came up with that. And the fact that the leader is like the loot player was hilarious. Like that was really funny. Like, yeah, like they're not making like the big strong strapping guy like have special abilities. He's just like he's the loot player. Okay, cool.
I'm curious if they're going to go into any of the stuff where orcs are modern world equivalency of repressed people. You know what I'm saying?
No, they better not do that. That's what I mean. Yeah, modern day D&D right. is getting infected by the
trash.
Same.
It's absolute trash.
Yeah,
that's why
it's getting infected by the same garbage that everything else is.
Yeah, and it has been for a long time, and that's why I haven't played it in a long time. But I will say the only other thing I want to say about this for me is I was super impressed with the trailer and the fact that they put a mimic in there and they got it correct.
Yes.
So, and if you don't know what that is, then go look it up. But
yeah, it's awesome.
It was awesome. So I
Crimson, you didn't like the owlbear?
I mean, visually it looks fantastic. And I don't care that it's technically a violation. It's just true tough quality.
How dare they? How dare they?
All right, guys. So we're gonna go
Guardians
for
of the Galaxy Kadish, but it could also be fun.
So we're going to go for the three-peat hat trick when it comes to topics today. We're going to talk about another fantasy trailer, this time the full trailer from Amazon's Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. They dropped this one. It is the first kind of full look at what we can expect from the series. We got Slim Shady Sauron. We got we got some... Yeah, we got Melf. We got a lot of kind of like there he is right there.
Is that Sauron? Because I've heard that's not. Sauron.
That's the rumor that's going around. A lot of outlets are reporting it as Sauron. Right. But we also got like a couple like I believe that this is supposed to be Sauron as well with like the weird hand. And here's another one with him apparently going amongst the orcs and stuff like that. But we got a lot of Galadriel in this trailer. We kind of got the sense that it starts off with the defeat of the previous Dark Lord, and everyone's happy and stuff like that. And they start all the political maneuvering as Sauron rises to power and tricks everyone into becoming enslaved to the rings and all this other fun stuff. I'm going to be honest. I actually really liked the trailer.
Oh,
I thought it was intriguing, and I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what they do with it. I liked the dialogue where it's like, hammer cannot ally itself with stone. Eventually, one of them is going to break. I just thought it was kind of like cool to get to see some of the better writing that because the previous trailer didn't have very good writing, but the visuals here were really good. I was kind of interested in some of the characters. and I liked that we actually got some of the story. So I want to get your guys' opinion. We're going to start with Mexican Iron Man. What did you think of this new full Rings of Power trailer?
Well, it was better than the last one. I am not a Lord of the at all expert. I'm literally saw the movies, read the first book. That's it. That describes me in this fandom. I don't go as deep here as I do with, say, Star Wars EU and Star Trek and all that other stuff. So, that being said, I've never seen a more hotly contested fandom than I see this one right now. It is if they better get this right. If they don't, then any and all reactions that we've ever seen, whether it's in the Star Trek universe or Return of the Jedi, Star Wars, just make a list. Halo recently, yeah, I'm a huge Halo guy. This will be a thermonuclear warhead of epic megatonnage proportion.
Yeah.
And if they get this wrong, they have to get this right. And if there's any jitterings about getting it wrong, they better course correct fast, because this is dangerous ground. I don't know why a company like Amazon would do this and go there. I mean, we don't need to have that discussion. It's, I don't want to derail this. I do think this looks a lot better than the last one, which I was extremely lukewarm on. I am going to watch it. I can't help but not watch it. And in fact, in preparation for watching it, I plan to rewatch all of my 4K masters of everything. Even though I know that this is set in a completely different place, I just still want to be in that state of mind when it comes out, so that I can appreciate whatever they're going to offer us.
How can they get it wrong when it's not based on anything?
Well, that's a loaded question.
That's a lot.
It's
still a lot of rules in the universe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If Gandalf walks in with a machine gun, for example.
Okay, well, that would be wrong. That would be wrong.
So Brian,
Saruman in a helicopter.
Brian, what was your take on this new trailer, and what do you think of Imanelf?
Hashtag that.
I love how you always load the questions up. Like, what did you think of Imanelf, or what did you think about? Did that look like Guardians of the Galaxy to you? Yeah, I mean, the trailer was better than the previous trailer. That's for sure. Still wasn't good though. I don't know if anyone's ever noticed, but like, so when we do when Shay and I do our show, we often record a bunch of stuff for the members after our public show. And then those clips that we clip out, we release throughout the week, or sometimes even the following week. And what we do is if it's not a timely clip, like if it's not important to the news, if it was just some observation, then we'll hold that clip and wait for some actual news to come out, or a trailer or something, before we release that clip. And so yesterday, when that trailer came out, we released our clip where we were talking about the showrunners and how inexperienced they are. And I gotta say, while the visuals look really good, it looks like the people they've hired to make this, it looks like there's two camps. There is the camp that really knows how to make compelling visuals, perhaps even compelling cinematography. But I don't know if I think the casting is dog shit, honestly. I don't find a single one of and not a single part of the cast, except for maybe Eminem, to be maybe Eminelf, to be possibly a good cast. Maybe that's just because the way the elf looks, but the casting is bad. I don't think any of the characters. I have no connection to any of the characters. I don't see anything compelling about them in any way. I haven't seen it yet, but it doesn't look very compelling. The story is compelling. They don't have to follow the same story. There is no story to follow. They don't even actually have the rights to anything, which is like so weird that you make a $500+ million project and you don't have the rights to any of the actual Tolkien stories, which is just silly. Like, what did you pay for it? You paid just to use the general universe? Is that what you paid for? You could have called it anything else then. But whatever it is, it makes no sense. And the showrunners that they picked make no sense either. Like, they have showrunners that, like, their previous credits are literally like Star Trek Beyond, and that's it. They have like almost no experience making a TV show. It's like, do they have blackmail on Jeff Bezos? Like, what did they find his dick pics and they're like holding them? I don't get it. So the trailer was an improvement. You're right. There was some compelling information there, but nothing I got excited over whatsoever. And honestly, I'm ready for the year of fantasy. I hope that Rings of Power does well, House of Dragons does well, Dungeons and Dragons does well. I hope that we can have a break from comics for a while and remind people how much better science fiction is, so we can get back to that. But that's where I'm at.
So, Crimson, you've obviously read The Lord of the Rings. You're probably well versed in the Tolkien lore. What do you think of this series and this trailer in general, and how do you think they're handling the notes that they're basing this off of from Tolkien?
Well, it's been a while since I've actually read the books, but I would not call myself a Tolkien expert. Certainly an admirer. I think that he created one of the most impressive literary universes of all time. The problem is, I think they are mishandling this show on just about every step of the way. They've been talking about this for well over a year by this point, and this trailer is the first time that I have felt even an inkling of interest in the entire project. The trailer was not bad, but after all of the news, after all of the controversy with how they're spending about it, how the fact this is effectively glorified fan fiction, as Brian pointed out, what the hell did they pay for? Where is all this money going towards? If you look at the passion, like the behind the scenes things that Peter Jackson had with the original trilogy, the costume designers were working around the clock. The camera crews were working around the clock. Viggo Mortensen walked around with actual Ranger gear. There was blood, sweat, and tears put into every frame of the original trilogy. I cannot say that they're doing the same thing here. Visually, it looks fine, but I think Vader said it earlier. It's 2022. That's expected these days. That's the baseline. I don't think that they're really doing enough in terms of the writing. That is ultimately what is going to kill or allow this show to really thrive. I think that there's been enough bad blood among the fans beforehand that you're going to have a lot of people that are just going to dig their heels in and say, no, this is going to be a terrible show. And they're never really going to give it a chance. They're going to go in there wanting to hate it. And you're going to have other people who are like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever, and completely ignore the glaring flaws. Mm-hmm. I don't think that this is going to be as universally despised as Halo was, because I have yet to hear anyone defend that particular series. I'm not holding my breath. The music in the trailer was great. The visuals in the trailer was great. I'm not sure about the casting. For the most part, I'm sure they're talented actors. I can't say for sure that they've been cast well or that they've been given good lines. So we'll have to see, but I'm not going to hold my breath.
Okay, fair enough.
Well said.
So, Vader, do you think this is the Star Trek Discovery of the Lord of the Rings in terms of dividing the fan base? And do you have any salt for this trailer?
These loaded questions.
I know, right?
Epic,
I know. It could be the discovery of the fantasy world. I don't know. We'll have to see how if there's any like lectures in there about using pronouns and stuff. That'd be kind of funny, right? Some female dwarf talking about how she braids her beard.
I go by they them.
It's like, do you put any? What kind of oil do you put in your beard, dear? It's like it's husband and wife dwarf. Sharing beard combs and it's like
math is awesome.
I almost hope all this happens because then the Saturday morning shows would just be epic.
This would be great. Yeah. I'm kind of with in Mike's camp with this. My knowledge of the Lord of the Rings is the original 3 movies, the Peter Jackson movies, and then the terrible Hobbit movies. And I read the Lord of the Rings books once. My big goal in life back then was to somehow, some way, get through each of those books before the movie got delivered to the theater. And I met that goal. But I'm a terrible reader, and those books are hard.
Yeah, they are.
And man, but as far as this thing goes, any movie that's sort of inspired by and based on the sort of maybe based on the works of J.R.R. Tolkien and throw Peter Jackson in there too, right, with some of the visual look. I don't have a lot of faith in this. I honestly hope it's terrible, because I need a show to just eviscerate on the show. I want this thing to be like Invasion level bad. That's what I want. I need something to talk some major shit about, and I hope this is that show, because
buckets of salt.
It's some real spite viewing.
Yeah. I good hate watching is fun, but when you know what I mean. But I don't know. I don't have a lot of expectations for this show. In fact, I don't have any. So. And again, like I said, with the Game of Thrones stuff, I watch these shows to be entertained. And I guess if they can entertain me, then I'll sort of be happy. But I really hope I'm not. I really want this thing to suck terribly.
Dragons and boobies, bro.
I want Jeff Bezos to literally lose billions of dollars on this thing. It'll just to watch people scream and cry and bitch and moan about it.
Bezos is gone, but
it's going to be epic. So yeah, we'll see how it goes.
All right. So speaking of hate watching, let's talk about New Trek, or more specifically, the history of new Star Trek. Brian from the Popcast here, our illustrious panel member, him and his brother Shane created another excellent Star Trek documentary called The Return of Star Trek, The Untold Story. It's creeping up on about 50,000 views right now. Over on YouTube. Brian, I assume if I play this, you're not going to copy strike me or something like that.
We'll see.
I don't know.
It depends if Matt takes off his Snyder pants off or not.
Well, this is still CBS, so they'll probably come after me if I play it. But,
I want a copyright strike. Imagine though if I didn't get copyright struck, but you did.
I know, right?
Imagine that.
CBS has my number. So, but you made this 35-minute kind of like breakdown of how Star Trek Discovery came to be, and who was behind it and what went wrong, and all types of really interesting stuff. And you based a little bit of your research on some of the articles I wrote about the behind-the-scenes, trials and tribulations of new Star Trek. And I wanted to give you a chance to kind of like give us the Cliff Notes version of this and get everyone's thoughts on the drama that happened that basically almost destroyed Star Trek. So Brian, take it away.
Yeah, thank you. The Cliff Notes is actually in the first minute of that video. It actually gives you a TLDR in case you didn't know what you were getting into. But basically it's our plan originally was to make a video called The Man Behind Discovery. That was our plan. Because there is this misconception that Alex Kurtzman is like the ultimate baddie, right? And it's just not the case. And I'm not a Kurtzman shill or whatever. And Kurtzman, Kurtzman is a corporate hack. But he's not the ultimate bad guy in this. In fact, you know what's funny? Is it possible for me to show you the poll I put out right before I put the video out?
Sure.
Because I put
your screen.
Let me give you a link. I put a poll out right before the video, and I wanted to the purpose of this was to sort of illustrate how wrong people were in retrospect, right? I'm putting it in the private chat.
Yep.
So that poll we put out right before the video, literally right before. And I even added the link to it. It said, who or what is responsible for the current condition of new Star Trek? And then I wrote after the fact, we dive deep here and break down every deal here. But I gave options. I put Les Moonves, Brian Fuller, Alex Kurtzman, and politics. Originally, I was going to put Donald Trump as a joke. My brother said, don't do that because then people will flame spray us. So I put politics. Les Moonbase.
You should have said J.J. Abrams.
Well, yeah. See, I didn't want to put J.J. Abrams because I knew people would have a hard time picking between Kurtzman and Abrams. Right. So I wanted them to be forced to choose one or the other. So I said, Les Moonbase, Brian Fuller's, Alex Kurtzman, politics. Now, listen, this poll, 62% of people said Alex Kurtzman. After watching the video, people still selected Alex Kurtzman. Nearly 1,000 votes. And 62% of these people say it was Alex Kurtzman. Okay, newsflash, if you watch the video, it wasn't Alex Kurtzman. And so we were going to make this video called The Man Behind Discovery and show that Brian Fuller was the main part of why Discovery, the direction that Discovery went into, and why it was such a crap show. And I know a lot of people had some love for Fuller because in their minds, he got let go from the studio, and that's why Discovery was bad. And Fuller was this like big Trekkie guy who loved Star Trek, and that's just not the case. Fact is, Fuller's vision was fully realized in the first 2 seasons of Discovery, down to his casting, down to his story decisions, down to the change in the Klingons. Fuller's entire vision was fully realized because the people he put in charge before he stepped down was his people. His like junior assistant showrunners are the people he promoted to full showrunner before leaving. So we were going to make that video. We started making that video. We started writing that script. And Matt Kadish on one of our Saturday shows, I brought it up. He was like, "Hey, go check out this article I wrote a couple years ago, or a year ago, whatever. Who gets, we really get into that, and we talk about Les Moonves and Akiva Goldsman." So I went and read it, and our 18, tops 18-minute video, maybe 15-minute video, turned into a 40-minute video after reading Kadish. In fact, it was actually an hour long, and I cut a bunch of stuff out in editing. I cut stuff out because I'm like, people already know this or whatever. I was trying to streamline it because Kadish's article was so detailed. And basically, that's what the story is. The story is about how New Trek started. Les Moonves canceled Enterprise because he hated Star Trek. And then years later, when streaming was becoming a thing, he not only did he didn't just hate Star Trek, but it wasn't really a moneymaker. It cost a lot of money. Cost a lot of money to make Star Trek, right? It's a science fiction show. So because it wasn't making a ton of money, and he didn't really care for the subject matter, he went out of his way to cancel it the second he got the power to do so. But then years later, when streaming became a thing and Netflix and everyone wanted a piece of Star Trek, Moonves saw value in it, and he launched Discovery. So the Me Too guy, the picture child of the Me Too movement, was the guy who originally decided to bring back Star Trek. And then when he did, he put Brian Fuller in charge. This, he's a gay, very liberal, very left-wing Trekkie who was pissed off that he was forced to work on Voyager and wanted to work on the much more progressive DS9, wanted to make his version of Star Trek, and he saw an opportunity to make the most progressive, liberal version of Star Trek to ever grace the screen, and that was going to be Discovery. And then he was fired he was basically let go because he was delaying it for so long so he can get Sonequa Martin Green in that primary role. And there was other things too, but a big part of it was he was delaying the finishing Discovery because he wanted to get Sonequa Martin Green. And he got his way ultimately, even though he got let go, and he promoted his assistants to showrunners, and they made his vision. And Alex Kurtzman was the guy that the studio brought in to try to curb or tone down Brian Fuller's really crazy ideas. So everyone blames Kurtzman for Star Trek when they literally hired him to chill out Brian Fuller's insanity. And he was not very successful in the first 2 seasons, but you can argue that as time went on, even though Discovery is still not a very good TV show, it definitely was less and less about Brian Fuller. In fact, when Kurtzman was fully in the driver's seat, he was like, "Send this crap to the future. Get it out of here," and he sent it away because he knew that they had made something that was indefensible. Like they couldn't fix it, and all it was going to do was ruin their plans going forward. So they in canon they moved it to the future. So Kurtzman gets a lot of hate because he's the guy in charge, but in reality, the return of Star Trek and the current condition it's in was ultimately on Moonbase and Fuller. And I would argue that Kurtzman actually might be doing, at least trying to do the right thing for the fans because it's good for business. Not because he believes in it or whatever, because it's good for business. And Strange New Worlds is a great step in the right direction. In fact, Discovery, like Sonequa Martin Green and other Discovery people are coming out and they're like telling fans that they heard them and they're changing the direction. They're going to be more episodic. The studio is actively trying to make a shift toward the Strange New Worlds model because it was so well received. And I think that could have only happened with Kurtzman. So
Yeah.
You mean the Star Trek model?
Right, the Star Trek model, the model we've been watching for 60 years. Yeah, that model
exactly.
Yeah.
But that's the whole video is really about how Brian Fuller should get the majority of your ire, and it's just not the case. Go ahead. Sorry.
So one of the things that your video didn't really even touch on were all the licensing issues, because at the time CBS and Paramount were two separate entities business-wise, but they were sharing the Star Trek license, and there was like a lot of infighting between Moonviz and Paramount about whether or not they should do a TV show versus a movie. And Sumner Redstone actually had to come in and tell Les Moonves to chill out for 5 years while they tried to get the new Star Trek going with J.J. Abrams. And then there was also a lot of controversy between J.J. Abrams and CBS because he was like, hey, I've got my Star Trek license. And they're like, screw your Star Trek license.
Right.
We want to do our own thing. And so like there was so much internal strife going on around the time that Discovery was getting launched that it was amazing that they were able to produce anything at all. But I want to get Crimson's kind of take on this. Crimson, are you a Star Trek fan? And did you know anything about the inner workings of the drama behind Discovery before you watched Brian's video?
Okay, so my backstory is back when I was but a wee child, my father and I used to watch Next Generation together like every week. It was one of our favorite bonding things to just hang out, and he'd enjoy the show and I would ask a lot of stupid questions. Who's that guy? Why did that blow up? But it was a lot of fun. I didn't really get into Star Trek beyond that. Watched a little bit of Voyager, checked out Enterprise for a few episodes. But then when they try to bring it back with Discovery, I got too much stuff to do. I didn't really got into it. And then I just kept hearing a bunch of drama and whatnot from the internet. People arguing whether or not it's well written or not. The most exposure I've had to it recently was watching Red Letter Media go over it and complain about how it completely shits all over the canon. So I don't really have a lot of insight to any particular drama. And Brian, I'm sorry that I haven't seen your video yet, but I got it queued up. I'm going to check it out after this. Because it sounds like you've got a pretty compelling case. I've heard Kurtzman's name said enough times on Red Letter Media that I think I've got a knee-jerk reaction to punch him in the nose if I ever see him in real life.
Right,
but,
which I had the same reaction until I did the research, and then I read Cage's thing, and I was like, oh wait a minute, he's not the baddie. He's a hack, but he's not the baddie.
I mean, that's what it sounds like. So, as far as any actual drama, I'm unfortunately tad ignorant, but I don't know. I can't really say that I'm looking forward to anything Star Trek related. It sounds like it's still kind of a mess.
So Michael, Mexican Iron Man, you have a long-standing relationship with Midnight's Edge that has covered Star Trek and the Kurtzman era and stuff like that. And I will say that Kurtzman is a little bit responsible because, I mean, they made 2 seasons of Picard under his banner and stuff like that. So what's your take on the behind-the-scenes strife of Star Trek?
Sorry about that. My mic was muted. I'll say 3 things. One, I want to, right off the bat, I want to compliment Brian, you and your brother. That was absolutely excellent. I watched it twice.
Thank you.
I found it. I was taking. The second time I watched it, I was actually taking notes. I do remember hearing Matt on the show on Midnight's Edge talk about some of those things that are, I guess, in those articles that he wrote before. But I just, number one, I want to tell everybody watching the show, watching the replay, go watch the Popcast video. It is incredibly well edited.
Yeah, there's a link in the description, by the way.
It is incredibly well done. My second thing I want to say is that, as referenced in that mini documentary, which reminds me of the thing we did over at Echo Base Network. We did a sequel trilogy thing. Coach and Nick did. I helped them wrap it up on the Star Wars stuff. Yours is just excellent. The second thing I'm going to say is that in your documentary, you mentioned there's a lot of fans that are gone. I'm one of them. I'm gone. I got burned out of doing the mental masturbation of looking for little nuggets of gold in all these different series, whether it's Discovery. Maybe they're gonna like take the doohickey, and the doohickey is gonna be connected to the Wakawoo, and that's all gonna tie back. And then once we get to the final episode, then we're gonna have the real woohickey, and it's all gonna tie together, and it's gonna be one big woohickey family. No, so I got tired of doing all the mental masturbation on Picard.
He's hired as a writer.
Strange New Worlds. I'm done. I'm out. I'm done. I'm not watching any of this crap anymore. So that's the second thing I have to say. The third thing I have to say is that for me, Kurtzman, yeah, I give him a lot of crap. But I'm going to use the same analogy that I draw with a few other things. Sort of like the whole Kevin Smith took all the heat, and a lot of heat from me on the whole Motu thing. Look, Kurtzman is an accessory and accomplice to a whole process that resulted in a lot of bad Trek for me.
Amen.
Okay, so and I always felt in my gut that the way Discovery launched, it was with one, like, it's so disjointed from what's come out like what I will be the first to say that while I think a lot of it is crap for me, the reality is that what we've seen in the last year or two is really different than the way Discovery launched. It is clear. If you lay all of these series out and have watched all of them, which I have painfully done, if you watch all of this stuff and you lay it up against the wall, your video, as well as Matt's research, combined with Matt's research, really shows that true trajectory in history. And look, I'm one of the first people to give Kurtzman a lot of smack. I do it on a whole lot of live streams. I've done it for a couple of years now. Thank you for the information. I learned a lot, but I'm still going to hold him guilty. He may not be the guy who came in and robbed the bank and blew the bank up and maybe took some hostages, but at a minimum, he's until I see otherwise, he's still driving the getaway car.
He's the getaway driver. That's a great analogy.
So that's your Mexican Iron Man analysis.
All right, so Matt Vader 74, you're an old school Star Trek fan, and you've also suffered through Kurtzman era. What's your take on Shane's documentary? Did it change your perspective on new era Star Trek?
Well, I now know to point my ire at Fuller more so than Kurtzman, but I still don't like Kurtzman either. So I'm just going to I'll troll both of them now instead of just one of them.
Yeah.
So whatever, it's fine. No, I love all of Popcast guys, Brian and Shane's videos. It's mostly because I can turn Shane's voice on when I'm trying to go to sleep, and I can sleep like a baby, like immediately. I need to get him to come and narrate something for us someday. But yeah, man, Star Trek. It is what it is. Star Trek and Star Wars are the two things that it doesn't matter how bad it gets, I'm gonna watch. I can't not do it. When it comes to other shows like the Orville and most of the new stuff that's out there, if I don't like something, I'm out. I'm done. I don't have to watch it anymore. But Star Wars and Star Trek are in my DNA, and I have to watch it, and I have to just hope that it gets good. And Star Trek, they've listened to us a little bit. Strange New Worlds wasn't terrible. It wasn't bad. There was 7 good episodes, 7 episodes that I liked out of the 10 episode season, and that was pretty good. So I feel like they're going down a better road there. But Discovery is awful. If they all of a sudden have a good season because they actually start sticking to the formula that makes Star Trek well, it'll be interesting, right? It's like I don't know if I have the will in me to want to call it anything that they do watchable.
Right.
Picard is hot trash. And I don't watch the kid shows. So
I gotta talk to you guys about Picard later on.
yeah,
I got some information I can't share on stream.
So anyway, the video is great. All the guys all their documentary style videos are absolutely amazing, first tier stuff. They should be playing on Netflix and real channels, not on YouTube out here.
Thanks,
that's how I feel about them, because they're that good.
Thanks.
And so keep up the good work. Yeah, that's all I got.
Alex Kurtzman and Brian Fuller and Les Moonves aside, I think we all know who the real villain behind New Star Trek is.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yes, I agree. Uh-huh.
Will King Wheaton.
Triggered.
All right, so we're gonna wrap up this episode of Salty Saturdays by talking about Wade, a Star Wars story. I threatened everyone last week by saying I was going to publish this, and it finally happened. The most important Star Wars character to ever exist, Wade, has gotten his own little short story from yours truly that I posted. The link is in the description. And I just wanted to let everyone know that it is now available on Wattpad. You can go read it. And I wanted to get some of your reactions for those who did have a chance to check it out. Mexican Iron Man, what did you think of Wade, a Star Wars story, episode 1?
I thought it was awesome. I really enjoyed it. I read it when you sent me the link, when you posted the link the other day before I knew we were going to discuss it. And when I think it was, I'm not sure how I got, but I got it first, I think in the Twitter DM, and then I saw on the show plan, so I read it again this morning when I got up. It's hilarious. It's awesome. At first I'm not sure where you're going with it. Like the way you started it, I'm like, where's he going with this? Then you went here, then you went there. There's some colorful language, what I will call no words.
No one in Star Wars talks like this.
Yeah, no one in Star Wars talks like this. And the dichotomous aspect of your story is that on the one hand, you would think that no one in Star Wars would actually act like this. But the truth of the matter is your story has actually things that have happened in actual Star Wars, which shows the absurdity of it. Now, I love that you picked up on Wade. Me, myself, when I saw that episode, I actually gravitated to him, and that was my first sarcastic comment of it, because I thought the writing was so bad, how he was in and out, and it was a big deal. I did not do what I'm about to show you for today's show, but I actually took one of my favorite little things that I have here in my home studio, which is this monolith, and then I took it and I made a little sticker. This was like when the episode came out. I don't know if you can read it. In memory of Wade. So I took my little 2001 little thingy and I put down here, and that sticker's been on there since the night the show. Wait, where is it? Can you see it? It's hard to see because of the. There we go. In memory of Wade. Funny. But now that I know from Matt's story, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to live take this away, because Wade is not a memory. He's more than that.
All right, so Matt Vader 74, you got a chance to sit down when we were last doing our recording days with Alex, and you got to voice one of the chapters from that. We're trying to turn it into an audio thing. What did you think of what you read?
I'm very much looking forward to the audio version coming out, and I just want to say that somehow when I was recording the voice of Stormtrooper 48 541, that somehow he's from Kentucky 4 in the Outer Rim planets, and because when I started reading his dialect, I started talking like this, and it was stupid. I'm like, what am I doing right now? But I couldn't stop. But
Southern Fried Stormtrooper,
Southern Fried Stormtrooper. But looking forward to that. I can't wait for Jude and Alex to put their voice work chops to it. I just wanted to be able to be a credit somewhere, so I got like a little quick 3-minute roll. It's good stuff, man. I am very, pleased to be a good friend of yours. Somebody that's so talented that can just all of a sudden just whip out something like that in no time flat, and it'd be so fun and interesting and entertaining. So read it, people. It's fun, and it's like, what didn't you say it was like 10,000 words?
No,
it's
it's
like
5,000 words.
5,000 words. So it's not that long of a read.
It's shorter than the Rolling Stone article we talked about at the beginning
Yeah.
of the of this live stream. But Brian, did you get a chance to read it? And if so, what did you think?
Sheer hubris. I like how you added that in there. Yeah, I read it. It's hilarious. Yeah, I want to publish it. And Popcast has like a publisher account on Amazon, and I'm like, if you would allow me to publish this, I will make an actual hard copy book out of it. I'm not joking. You think I'm joking? Awesome. I will make a legitimate book out of it.
You may want to wait for the next 2 episodes to be published.
Maybe wait for the whole thing to make like a big long
the Wade omnibus, right?
The Wade omnibus. But yeah, and if you need any character's voice, just holler at me. I can't wait for the audio portion. It's gonna be fantastic. And I do really want to. I'm not joking when I say I want to publish it.
Yeah, so like the idea behind this is that it's kind of like a Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead type thing, where you take a minor inconsequential character and put them at the forefront and make them like the big hero. And this first episode is all about Wade surviving the crash after his ship gets blown up and infiltrating the sanctum, the Fortress Inquisitorius, and meeting a Jedi Master and realizing that he's Force sensitive and he's going to be trained as a Jedi, and that he has to escape with his new Jedi Master from the secret Imperial base. And it was a lot of fun writing. Crimson, I know you didn't get a chance to read it because you missed out on the email with like the links and stuff. But did you get to watch Obi-Wan, the series, and what did you think of it?
Actually, no, because I don't care. I haven't liked anything that Disney's really done with Star Wars, so I saw absolutely no reason to even give Kenobi a chance. I've heard people complaining about Wade, about how he was apparently a wasted character, the way that he was killed off so suddenly. I think that they were kind of going for a shock death from what I've been able to gather.
Well, the joke was they introduced him for all of 3 seconds, and then when he died, they made a huge deal over the fact that he died. And everyone was like, who are they mourning?
There's like a funeral and everything, and we're like, who the f was who was this person?
Who was Wade?
Is that one random character that exploded? Really?
So apparently, I'm very out of the loop. But I will give the story a chance at some point. See if because I read plenty of bad books. It will be nice to get something good for a change. Although, if you do ever print a physical copy, I will have plenty of annotative tabs ready.
I expect a full 3-hour-long video breaking down how bad it is.
Listen, when you finish this, I swear to God, I'll print a physical copy.
All right, that's cool with me. Let Lucasfilm come after you for copyright infringement.
No. We have a way around that. We have a way around that over here at the Popcast Publishers.
Awesome.
Oh, we own the print shop. That's how. Oh yeah.
Nice. All right, guys. Well, that was it for this episode of Salty Saturdays. I want to thank everyone in the chat for coming out and having fun with us and partaking in our very robust discussions about all things pop culture. Had a great deal of fun. Thank you all who gave us super chats. We really appreciate that because it helps support the show. We are trying to go full time with this business, so the more you contribute, the more closer we get to having Matt Vader come on full time and Alex come on full time, so we can do more live streams and more fun stuff. I also want to thank our new contributors to the discussion panel, Crimson Rogue and Mexican Iron Man. You guys were fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time to come out today. And I'm going to go around and you can tell everyone where they can find you on the socials and where they can look at you on YouTube. So Crimson Rogue, why don't we start with you? Final thoughts and where can people find out more about you?
All right. Well, final thoughts. I really hope that Hollywood gets better writers because, my God, do they need it. As far as where to find me, I'm most active on YouTube and Twitter at Crimson Rogue. Again, Crimson spelled with a K, where you can see me break down all sorts of awful, horrible tedious books one way or another, with all sorts of memes and old references that you haven't thought about in a while. I've got quite a few books lined up. Actually, I have not announced this yet, but Matt, if you don't mind, I can talk about my next project real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the next book I'm going to be reviewing is called The World Rose, which is this schmaltzy attempt to take at a fairy tale. It is as trite as you can imagine. The interesting thing about it is that the author is a convicted criminal who went after a woman who wrote a bad review about his precious book and attacked her in a grocery store by smashing a bottle of wine over her head. He did 30 months.
Jesus.
Yeah, he's kind of a psychopath. So this is not going to be a review. I am going to bully this guy.
Well, I hope that you have some bodyguards to prevent him from coming after you.
If you see a picture of him, a sturdy deadbolt is all you need. Scrawny little guy.
And where can they find you on social media?
Twitter and YouTube are the best at Crimson Rogue. I believe you have a link in the description of the video.
Yes.
That's best.
Awesome. All right, Mexican Iron Man, where can people find out more about you and follow you on the socials? And do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share before we wrap up?
I posted my links on Twitter, YouTube, and the live stream for my channel on YouTube. And most of the time during the week, I'm doing either Midnight Sidge After Dark or Midnight Sidge, since I'm the number 3 guy over with Andre and Tom. I want to thank you for having me. My final thoughts are keep up the great work. I really find that this channel and all the podcasts, it's just absolutely stellar. The topics, the people, guys like Brian, Matt Vader, rotating in people like me and Crimson. Awesome. I'm such a huge fan, and I hope this channel explodes and grows because you guys do phenomenal work.
Oh, we appreciate that. Brian from the Popcast, any final thoughts, and where can people find out more about you?
Love you, love everyone here. You guys can find us on the Popcast, of course. I'm gonna be combing through all the Comic-Con stuff after this stream. Great to be on the panel with you guys. It was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for letting me be here. And if you guys haven't seen that video, go check it out and go read the articles. And I'm surprised the Wade story is not on Medium. Do you not like money? I don't understand.
Well, I have a Medium account and I considered putting it up there, but I don't know. Maybe I'll republish it there. Who knows?
Because you can make money on Medium.
You can, but it's behind a paywall, so not everyone can read it unless they're paying
That's
members.
True.
So I want people to be able to read it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been fun, everybody. Love you.
Great. Matt Vader 74. Final thoughts, and where can people find you?
Oh, had a great time as always today with Mike and Crimson and Brian. Always here. You can find me at Matt Vader 74 on most of the socials, mostly Twitter and a little bit on Facebook and YouTube. Just thanks to the chat. Thanks to all you guys again. Matt, thanks for hosting. What do we got coming out next week? We got Mel Gibson week.
It's Kill Bill week.
Kill Bill week. Oh man,
Kill Bill week.
Okay, so Matt Braveheart's after that. So Mel Gibson and Kill Bill. That's what we got coming up in the next couple weeks.
Yeah,
so.
next week we have Salty Nerds Read Mean YouTube comments, followed by our reviews of Kill Bills Part 1 and 2. And we've also got our final Star Trek, the original series episode coming out next Tuesday, before we switch over to reviewing the first couple episodes of Farscape for the month of August. I'm really looking forward to that because that's my month. I chose that show.
I think people are really going to like our Salty Nerds Read mean comments because we film that at the end of the day, and if anybody knows us at all, they know what to expect there because we're 4 or 5 hours in. So yeah, that's going to be something.
And also every Tuesday when we get together to record our Salty Nerd podcasts, we also live stream them to Twitter via Twitter Spaces. So if you guys want to listen to us live, you just keep an eye for that there. And you can hear all of our flubs and mistakes and stuff that we normally cut out of the finished episode. Anyway, guys, I am Matthew Kadish, the put upon producer of the Salty Nerd podcast. I really appreciate you guys coming out today, participating in the chat. We really appreciate all the support that you guys give us. And until next Saturday, stay salty, my friends.